while Nike and Zara battle for your attention with flashy ads and celebrity deals. There is a Japanese company that is quietly making more money than both of them combined in their home markets, and chances are you're wearing their clothes right now without even knowing it. What if I told you that the richest man in Japan didn't make his fortune from tech, cars, or video games? He did it by selling plain t-shirts. Today, we're diving deep into the story of Uniqlo, a brand that went from a single store in a small Japanese town to a global empire worth over $80 billion. This is the story of how they cracked the code that every fashion brand dreams of solving. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at basic clothing the same way again. Let's go back to 1949. Japan is still recovering from World War II. The country is broken, cities are in ruins, and people are just trying to survive. In a small city called Ube, about 500 miles from Tokyo, a man named Hitoshi Yanai opens a small men's clothing shop. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just another store trying to make it in post-war Japan. But here's where it gets interesting. Hitoshi's son, Tadashi Yanai, absolutely hated the family business. As a kid, he watched his father work long hours in that tiny shop, dealing with difficult customers, counting pennies, barely making ends meet. Young Tadashi wanted nothing to do with it. He studied economics at university, and after graduating in 1971, he went to work for a big supermarket chain. He wanted the corporate life, the stability, the prestige, but life had other plans. In 1972, his father convinced him to come back and help with the family business. Tadashi was 23 years old and furious about it, but he came back anyway, and this is where the magic starts. Tadashi looked at his father's store and saw everything that was wrong with Japanese retail. The store was small, the selection was limited, customers had to talk to sales staff for everything. It was slow, it was inefficient, it was stuck in the past. But instead of just complaining, Tadashi had a crazy idea. What if clothing stores could work like supermarkets? Think about it. When you go to a supermarket, you don't need a salesperson following you around. You can touch the products, check the prices, compare options, and make your own decisions. It's fast, it's efficient, you're in control. But in the 1970s, clothing stores in Japan didn't work like that at all. Everything was behind counters. You had to ask staff to show you things. It was intimidating and time-consuming. In 1984, Tadashi opened his first store in Hiroshima with this revolutionary concept. He called it Unique Clothing Warehouse. The name was later shortened to Uniqlo because of a registration mistake. Yes, you heard it right. The name Uniqlo is actually a mistake. Someone misread the CN. Uniqlo is a Q when registering the trademark. But Tadashi loved it and kept it. This first Uniqlo store was different from anything Japan had seen before. It was like a warehouse. Clothes were stacked on shelves. Everything had clear price tags. Customers could walk around freely, touch everything, try things on without pressure. No pushy salespeople, no judgment. Just simple, affordable clothing that you could buy the way you buy groceries. And it worked. People loved it. Within a few years, Uniqlo started opening more stores. By 1994, they had 100 stores across Japan. The concept was spreading like wildfire. But here's the thing, Tadashi Yanai wasn't satisfied. Having 100 stores in Japan was good, but he had a much bigger vision. He wanted to build a global empire, and to do that, he needed to completely change how clothing was made and sold. Let me explain the traditional fashion business model. Most fashion brands work like this. They design clothes. They find factories to make those clothes. They sell those clothes to stores, and those stores sell to customers. There are so many people taking a cut along the way. The factory takes their profit, the brand takes their profit, the store takes their profit. By the time that shirt reaches you, the price has doubled or tripled from what it cost to make. Tadashi looked at this system and thought it was stupid. Why have all these middlemen? Why not control everything from start to finish? Design the clothes yourself. Make them in your own factories. Sell them in your own stores. This way, you can keep the prices low and the quality high. This is called vertical integration, and it's what changed everything for Uniqlo. But there was a problem, a massive problem. In 1998, Uniqlo tried to expand overseas for the first time. They opened stores in London. Tadashi was confident the model worked perfectly in Japan, so why wouldn't it work in England? He invested millions. He hired local staff. He picked great locations. And then, disaster struck. The stores failed badly. British customers didn't get it. They walked into Uniqlo and saw racks of plain, basic clothing. No trendy designs, no flashy logos, nothing exciting in their minds. It was just boring clothes. Why would they buy a plain fleece jacket from some unknown Japanese brand when they could get something cooler from Gap or Zara? Within 2 years, Uniqlo had to close most of their London stores. It was a humiliating failure. Tadashi had lost millions of dollars. Industry experts said that Uniqlo was just another Japanese brand that couldn't make it. Internationally, the dream of global expansion seemed dead. But here's what separated Tadashi and I from every other failed entrepreneur. Instead of giving up, he became obsessed with figuring out what went wrong. He didn't blame the British customers. He didn't blame the economy. He blamed himself and his strategy. He realized that he had made a critical mistake. He had treated international expansion like a side project. He had kept the same products, the same marketing, the same everything from Japan and just copied it to London. That doesn't work. Tadashi went back to the drawing board. He studied every successful global brand. He analyzed Gap. He studied Zara. He looked at H&M. He traveled to their stores. He bought their clothes. He took them apart to see how they were made. He was like a detective trying to solve a mystery. And slowly, he started to understand what Uniqlo needed to become. The answer wasn't about being trendy. It wasn't about fast fashion. It was about creating clothes that were so good at the basics that people couldn't ignore them. Clothes that felt expensive but weren't. Clothes that lasted years instead of months. Clothes that solved real problems that people had. This led to one of the most important innovations in Uniqlo's history. In 2003, they launched a product called Heattech. Now, stay with me here because this is where things get really interesting. Heattech is a thin fabric that keeps you warm. Sounds simple, right? But it's not. The fabric is made with microscopic air pockets that trap your body heat. It absorbs moisture from your skin and converts it into heat. It's so thin you can wear it under anything, but it keeps you as warm as a thick sweater. When Heattech launched, it was a game changer. People in cold countries went crazy for it. Suddenly, you didn't need to wear bulky winter clothes. You could wear a thin Heattech shirt under your normal clothes and stay warm all day. Uniqlo sold millions of units in the first year, and they didn't stop there. They created Aerism, a fabric that keeps you cool in summer using the opposite technology. They developed ultra-light down jackets that could be folded into a tiny pouch but were as warm as traditional puffy jackets. They made jeans that stretch like leggings but look like regular denim. Every product was designed to solve a real problem. This wasn't fashion. This was functional innovation dressed up as clothing. But Tadashi knew that great products alone weren't enough. He needed to change how people thought about Uniqlo. He needed to make basic clothing cool. And to do that, he made a genius move. He started collaborating with world-famous designers. In 2009, Uniqlo launched a collaboration with Jill Sander, one of the most respected minimalist designers in the world. The collection was called Uniqlo Plus J when it launched. There were lines around the block. Stores sold out in hours. People were fighting over cashmere, sweaters, and wool coats. Fashion magazines that had ignored Uniqlo for years were now writing glowing reviews. This opened the floodgates. Uniqlo started collaborating with everyone. They worked with fashion designers like La Mer. They partnered with cultural icons like KAWS. They created collections with major brands like J.W. Anderson, They even made t-shirt lines featuring art from museums like the Louvre and MoMA. Suddenly, wearing Uniqlo wasn't boring anymore. It was smart. It was cool. It was what people in the know wore. And here's the brilliant part. These collaborations brought people into Uniqlo stores. But once they were there, they didn't just buy the designer collaboration pieces. They discovered the regular Uniqlo products. They tried on those amazing jeans. They felt how soft the t-shirts were. They saw the prices and couldn't believe how affordable everything was. The collaborations were the bait, but the everyday products were the real catch. By 2005, Uniqlo was ready to try international expansion again. But this time, they were smarter. They didn't start with Europe or America. They started with Asia. They opened stores in South Korea, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, markets where Japanese brands were already respected, markets where the climate and customer needs were similar to Japan. And it worked. Asian customers immediately got what Uniqlo was about. They appreciated the quality. They understood the value. They loved the functional innovation. By 2010, Uniqlo had hundreds of stores across Asia and was making billions in revenue. But Tadashi still had his eyes on the ultimate prize, America, New York City specifically. If Uniqlo could make it in New York, they could make it anywhere. In October 2006, Uniqlo opened their first flagship store in New York City. Not in some random location. They opened on Broadway in Soho, one of the most fashionable neighborhoods in Manhattan. The store was massive, 3 floors, bright, modern, filled with colorful displays of their innovative products. But Tadashi wasn't taking any chances this time. He knew Americans didn't know Uniqlo, so he created an experience they couldn't ignore. He hired a famous window designer to create eye-catching displays. He organized a huge opening event. He made sure fashion bloggers and journalists were invited. He even priced everything aggressively low for the launch to get people through the door. And something magical happened. New Yorkers loved it. The store was packed from day one. Fashion-conscious New Yorkers discovered that they could buy a cashmere sweater for $80, when everywhere else charged $200 or more. They found perfect-fitting jeans for $40. They stocked up on heat tech for the brutal New York winters. Word spread quickly. Within a year, that single store was making tens of millions in revenue. It became one of the most successful retail stores in all of New York City. Uniqlo had finally cracked the Western market, and they did it by staying true to what made them special: simple, high quality, functional clothing at prices that made sense. But while Uniqlo was growing in America, something even bigger was happening in China. Chinese consumers were becoming wealthier. They wanted quality products but didn't want to overpay for luxury brands. Uniqlo was perfect for them. The brand exploded in China. By 2020, China had become Uniqlo's biggest market outside of Japan, with over 750 stores and billions in annual revenue. Today, Uniqlo has over 2,400 stores in more than 25 countries. They generate over $20 billion in revenue every year. And Tadashi and I, that kid who didn't want to work in his father's clothing shop, is now worth over $40 billion, making him the richest person in Japan and one of the richest people in the world. But here's what makes this story really special. Uniqlo succeeded by doing the opposite of what every other fashion brand was doing. While Zara and H&M were chasing trends and producing thousands of new designs every year, Uniqlo focused on perfecting the basics. While other brands were slapping their logos on everything, Uniqlo made clothes with no visible branding, while competitors were using cheap fabrics and labor to maximize profits. Uniqlo invested in research and development to create better materials. Let me give you some perspective on how different Uniqlo is. Zara releases about 12,000 different designs every year. 12,000. They have an entire research and development center in Tokyo called the Uniqlo Innovation Center. Scientists and engineers work there developing new fabrics and technologies. They partner with Toray Industries, one of Japan's biggest chemical and materials companies, to create exclusive fabrics that no other brand can use. This is why heat tech only exists at Uniqlo. This is why their ultra-light down jackets are lighter and warmer than competitors. They're not just buying fabric from suppliers like everyone else. They're inventing the fabric itself, and the quality shows. I'll give you a personal example that millions of customers share. A regular t-shirt from most fast fashion brands lasts maybe 6 months before it starts fading, stretching, or falling apart. A Uniqlo t-shirt can last for years. Their jeans don't lose their shape. Their sweaters don't peel after a few washes. This isn't an accident. It's intentional design and manufacturing. But Uniqlo's success isn't just about products. It's about understanding human psychology. Tadashi and I understood something that most fashion brands miss. Most people don't want to think about clothes every single day. They don't want to spend hours figuring out what to wear. They don't want to constantly buy new things because trends change every month. They want a closet full of reliable, comfortable, good-looking clothes that work for any situation. This is why so many successful people wear Uniqlo. If you look closely, you'll notice that entrepreneurs, artists, and creative professionals often wear simple, basic clothing. Steve Jobs had his black turtleneck. Mark Zuckerberg has his gray t-shirt. Barack Obama talked about only wearing blue or gray suits to reduce decision fatigue. These people understood that spending mental energy on clothing choices every day is a waste. Uniqlo provides the solution. High-quality basics that let you focus on what actually matters. There's also something deeper happening here. Uniqlo represents a shift in how people think about consumption. For decades, fashion was about showing off, designer logos, expensive brands, status symbols. But younger generations are different. Millennials and Gen Z care more about value, sustainability, and authenticity than showing off wealth. They'd rather spend money on experiences than expensive clothes. They want things that last, not things that scream, "Look how much money I have." Uniqlo fits perfectly into this new mindset. When you wear Uniqlo, you're not making a statement about your wealth or status. You're making a statement about your values. You value quality over hype, function over fashion, smart spending over wasteful consumption. In a weird way, Uniqlo has become the anti-brand brand, and that's exactly why it works. The company has also been smart about sustainability, which matters more and more to consumers. While they're not perfect, Uniqlo has committed to using more sustainable materials, recycling old clothes, and reducing waste in their manufacturing process. They've also been transparent about their supply chain and working conditions, which is something fast fashion brands often try to hide. Let's talk about the business model for a second because it's genuinely fascinating. Remember how I mentioned vertical integration earlier? This is what makes Uniqlo so profitable. Most fashion brands have profit margins between 5 to 10%. Uniqlo's profit margin is consistently above 10% and sometimes reaches 15%. That might not sound like much, but when you're selling billions of dollars worth of products, those extra percentage points mean billions in profit. Here's how it works. Uniqlo designs everything in-house. They work directly with fabric manufacturers to create custom materials they own or have long-term contracts with factories that make their clothes. They sell everything in their own stores or on their own website. By controlling every step, they eliminate the markups that happen when products pass through multiple companies. But here's the really clever part. Because Uniqlo focuses on basics that don't go out of style, they can manufacture in huge quantities. When you make 1 million plain white t-shirts, the cost per shirt drops dramatically compared to making 10,000 trendy graphic tees. This is called economies of scale. The more you make, the cheaper each unit becomes. Uniqlo sells over 1 billion items every year. The efficiency they've achieved is almost impossible for smaller brands to compete with. They also use data in incredibly smart ways. Every Uniqlo store tracks what sells, what doesn't, what sizes are most popular, what colors people prefer. This data goes back to headquarters and influences production decisions. If skinny jeans are selling less and straight-leg jeans are selling more, they shift production immediately. There's no guessing, no hoping a trend works out, just cold, hard data driving decisions. And unlike typical fast fashion brands that create new designs constantly, Uniqlo improves existing products year after year. That perfect white t-shirt you bought last year, this year's version is slightly better. Maybe the cotton is a bit softer. Maybe the fit was adjusted based on customer feedback. Maybe the stitching is reinforced in areas that wore out faster. This continuous improvement philosophy comes from Japanese manufacturing culture, specifically the concept of Kaizen, which means constant, incremental improvement. Another fascinating aspect of Uniqlo's strategy is their store locations. They don't just open stores anywhere. They specifically target high-traffic urban areas and flagship locations. You'll find massive Uniqlo stores on Fifth Avenue in Newark, Oxford Street in London, the Champs-Élysées in Paris. These aren't just stores. They're advertisements. When tourists from around the world visit these cities, they see these massive, beautiful Uniqlo stores and become curious. They go in, they buy something, and when they return to their home countries, they look for Uniqlo there. The store design itself is carefully planned. Everything is bright and organized. Products are displayed by type and color, creating a rainbow effect that's visually appealing and makes shopping intuitive. There are fitting rooms everywhere because Uniqlo wants you to try things on. They know that once you feel how good their clothes are, you're more likely to buy. The checkout process is fast. Many stores now use self-checkout machines that can scan multiple items at once. Using RFID technology, you just drop your items in a box, and the machine instantly reads everything and tells you the total. It takes seconds. Uniqlo also understood early on that online shopping would be huge. They invested heavily in their e-commerce platform and made it seamless with their physical stores. You can order online and return in store. You can check online if your size is available at a nearby location. During the pandemic, when physical retail collapsed, Uniqlo's online business exploded, cushioning the blow and actually helping them gain market share while other brands struggled. Let us talk about Tadashi Yanai himself for a moment, because his leadership is a huge part of why Uniqlo succeeded. Unlike many billionaire CEOs who become disconnected from their business, Tadashi is still deeply involved. At 75 years old, he still visits stores regularly. He still reads customer feedback. He's known for being incredibly demanding and difficult to work with. Employees say he pushes them relentlessly to improve and never accepts good enough. There is a famous story about how Tadashi once rejected an entire season's worth of products just weeks before they were supposed to hit stores, because he didn't think the quality was good enough. This cost the company millions, but he didn't care. He believed that protecting Uniqlo's reputation for quality was more important than short-term profits. This kind of long-term thinking is rare in the business world, where quarterly results often matter more than long-term vision. Tadashi has also been open about his failures and what he learned from them. After the London disaster in the early 2000s, he wrote a book called One Win, 9 Losses, where he talked about how most of his business decisions were failures, but the few that succeeded were big enough to make up for all the losses. This kind of honesty and willingness to learn from mistakes is part of what makes him such an effective leader. Another key to Uniqlo's success is their approach to inventory management. This is technical but important. Most fashion retailers end up with tons of unsold inventory at the end of each season. They have to do massive sales to clear it out, which cuts into profits. Uniqlo avoids this problem in 2 ways. First, because their clothes are basics that don't go out of style. Items from last season can still sell this season. A white Oxford shirt is a white Oxford shirt whether it's spring or fall. Second, their data systems are so good at predicting demand that they rarely overproduce. And when they do have excess inventory, they have outlet stores and online flash sales to clear it quickly, without damaging the brand. The company has also been smart about adapting to local markets while maintaining their core identity. In Southeast Asia, where it's hot year-round, Uniqlo stores focus heavily on airism and light, breathable fabrics. In Scandinavia and Canada, heat tech and warm clothing dominate. In the Middle East, they offer more modest clothing options. They respect local cultures and preferences without compromising what makes Uniqlo special. One area where Uniqlo has been particularly smart is in their use of technology, not just in fabrics but in operations. Their warehouses use advanced robotics and AI to manage inventory. Their supply chain is connected through sophisticated software that tracks everything from raw materials to finished products in stores. This level of technological integration is more common in tech companies than fashion brands, but it gives Uniqlo a huge competitive advantage. Looking at the competition, it's interesting to see how Uniqlo fits into the global fashion landscape. Zara is bigger globally with more stores, but Zara's model is trend-chasing fast fashion. H&M is similarly focused on trends and low prices. Gap, which was once America's answer to basic clothing, has struggled for years and lost its identity. Muji, another Japanese brand, is similar to Uniqlo but smaller and more focused on home goods. No other brand occupies the exact space Uniqlo does. High quality, functional basics with innovative technology at affordable prices. The future looks bright for Uniqlo, but they face challenges. As they've grown, maintaining the same level of quality control becomes harder. Competition is increasing as other brands try to copy their model. Consumer preferences are always changing, and there's the constant challenge of sustainability. The fashion industry is one of the world's biggest polluters, and even though Uniqlo is better than most fast fashion brands, they still produce massive quantities of clothing. But if history tells us anything, it's that betting against Tadashi and Uniqlo is a bad idea. They've proven again and again that they can adapt, innovate, and win. They turned failure in London into a learning experience that made them stronger. They cracked the American market when everyone said it was impossible. They became the dominant foreign fashion brand in China, the world's biggest market. So what can we learn from Uniqlo's rise? First, being boring can be brilliant in a world where everyone is screaming for attention. Sometimes the quiet approach wins. Second, focus on fundamentals. Uniqlo didn't try to do everything. They focused on doing basics better than anyone else. Third, vertical integration and controlling your supply chain gives you huge advantages in quality and price. Fourth, never stop improving. Those small, incremental improvements add up to major advantages over time. And finally, understand what customers actually want, not what you think they want or what's trendy. Uniqlo proved that you don't need flashy marketing, celebrity endorsements, or trendy designs to build a massive global brand. You just need to make great products, price them fairly, and respect your customers' intelligence. In an age of influencer marketing and viral trends, Uniqlo's success feels almost old-fashioned. But maybe that's exactly why it works. The next time you're shopping for clothes, think about what you really need. Do you need the latest trend that'll be out of style in 6 months? Or do you need clothes that work, last, and don't make you think twice? That's the question Uniqlo has been answering for decades. And based on their success, millions of people around the world have decided they prefer the latter. From a single shop in a small Japanese town to a global empire worth tens of billions. From a son who didn't want the family business to the richest man in Japan. From humiliating failure in London to massive success worldwide. Uniqlo's story is proof that sometimes the best way to win is to ignore what everyone else is doing and just focus on being excellent at the basics. If this story changed how you think about fashion and business, the next video will blow your mind even more.